Good afternoon, and thank you for everyone for being here today on Monday afternoon. I appreciate it. We've had a challenging weekend since I was here before you on Friday afternoon. Obviously, we lost Simpson County Deputy Sheriff James Blair. I want to personally say to his family how much we are praying for you, how much we love you. We're so sorry that this occurred. Many of the folks that I work with on a daily basis knew the deputy sheriff. I, of course, know the sheriff of Simpson County very well, and we are praying for you, and I want the people of our state to know that. Before Dr. Dobbs and Director Michelle give their updates today, I want to first let everyone know that I do have a White House call at 3 o'clock. And so while I may be a little bit late to that call, I can't be real late. And so at some point, I'm going to have to cut questions off today, which is unusual, but we will work our way through it. But before I get to Dr. Dobbs and Director Michelle to give their regular updates, I wanted to make sure that we underline a serious issue going on across the country. It is happening in virtually every state. It is certainly happening here, and we are tracking it very closely. Unemployment systems across the country are being attacked with false claims. Mississippi's certainly has been. These are often sophisticated networks of criminal hackers who will take your information, apply for unemployment, and then reap your benefits. It can have serious consequences for you, and obviously it can have serious consequences for the system. Please guard your personal information closely. We are doing everything in our power on our end to prevent any fraudulent claims. But in the effort to get assistance to people quickly, we know that some have gotten through. I'm happy today to have U.S. Attorney Mike Hurst with us to provide a message to any scammers who want to test his resolve in prosecuting these crimes. But first, I'd like to ask Director Jackie Turner to provide an update on what MDES is doing as well on these fraud issues.
Thank you, Governor Reeves. It's been a few weeks since I was with you, and of course, we have paid out over $1 billion in unemployment funds from not only the combination of the Mississippi's Trust Fund along with the CARES Act dollars that have been coming to us from the Treasury and the U.S. Department of Labor and the congressional action that they took for us all in the pandemic crisis. Unfortunately, with that does come a bit of fraudulent activity, and we at MDS, along with the enforcement agencies, Mr. Hurst and a host of others, have been talking weekly and if not daily on the efforts that we have going to combat fraud. First of all, let me say the most important thing is if you think you are a victim of fraud, report it immediately. The way to report it to MDS is to email us at safe@mds.ms.gov. When you report that, we will put a stop on the payments that are going to that fraudulent claim. In addition to that, we will ask the people to provide information to us, an affidavit and some identifying information so that you can protect yourself from identity theft and those kinds of things. You'll have to contact your local law enforcement agency, and that information goes to us as well, so we can put those stops on the unemployment insurance claims and then prevent future payments from being made. So we have had many attempts in the last couple of weeks. We have coordinated specifically with the enforcement agencies. We have many internal processes as well, cross matches and those things to combat fraud. But even so, as Governor Reeves said, with the rush to pay people quickly, some of those fraudsters have gotten through, I suppose. Along with that, I want to say that employers can be a great resource to us as well. We've been working with the Governor Reeves staff on the Restart Mississippi initiative and recognizing that there needs to be a more robust way to report information to us at Employment Security, not only for people receiving unemployment insurance through a fraudulent means, but also to let us know when they have hired employees back or brought employees back to work. It's time to get Mississippi restarted. And along that way, some people may be, they may think that it's better to file that unemployment and get that extra $600 for a few weeks. But I would categorize that in the category of fraud. If you're receiving unemployment insurance and you have a job to return to, or if you have a job that is waiting for you, then the intent is for unemployment insurance to no longer be needed. So employers play an important role in that so that they can let us know when they are calling their employers back. We have a greater robust system to do that, which will come online Monday, if not before, called Restart Mississippi Initiative, and we will be working with employers, and they will be able to tell us when people are brought back on to work, among other things, including fraudulent activity that may be going on. So there are a host of activities that are going on. We recognize that fraud is being, specifically in the last few weeks, we have heard numerous complaints and reports of fraud. We're on top of it. We have many ways to combat it on the front end so that it never gets started. But if those few that get through on the back end, please report it timely, safe at mds.ms.gov, and employers, when you recognize it, please report it as well. And through all of that, we will get through it together.
Thank you, Jackie, for your hard work on this and other things in this unprecedented times. I also want to underscore the importance of the Mississippi legislature refilling the unemployment trust fund. I have serious concerns that small businesses are going to be hit with an automatic tax increase if they do not do this. It has to be a priority. Otherwise, it is going to be workers and small business owners across the state who see their fees and their taxes go up exponentially. This is exactly what the CARES Act was designed to pay for. It is critical that it gets funded at the appropriate level, or we are going to see a lot of people hit with increased taxes in 2021 at an absolute terrible, terrible time. Now, turning back to the fraud that was mentioned earlier, this is a priority for us. We are going to find the people responsible, and we are going to prosecute them. I have known U.S. Attorney Mike Hurst for a long time, and he is at the tip of the spear here. I've asked him to be here today to share a word of warning on this issue. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Governor. Governor, we're here today to talk about unemployment fraud. As Jackie mentioned, MDES has been on the forefront of this, and Jackie, I want to thank you and your staff for that. About a month ago, the United States Secret Service put out a bulletin advising individuals that an international fraud ring had begun targeting 7 states across the country. And we've seen examples in newspaper reports of Washington State being hit pretty hard. Some of our southern states like North Carolina and Florida, and unfortunately Mississippi is not immune to this fraud going around. Recently, the Department of Labor's Inspector General noted that up to $26 billion could be wasted in unemployment fraud. $26 billion. And as Jackie said, to her credit and to her staff's credit, they quickly reached out to the United States Secret Service, to the Department of Labor Office of Inspector General, and we've brought in other partners, including our State Attorney General's office, our State Auditor's office, Social Security, Office of Inspector General, and others to investigate this. Now, as the Governor mentioned, we will, in the United States Attorney's Office, prosecute this to the fullest extent of the law. And we actually have expertise in this. If some of you may remember, after Hurricane Katrina, the federal government sent a lot of money back home to Mississippi, to Louisiana, and Alabama, and unfortunately, we had a lot of fraud associated with that money coming back to the state. So we are well equipped in this office to prosecute this, and we have incredible partners, as I mentioned, with the United States Secret Service and the Department of Labor. So let me just leave you with this. If you're a victim, as Jackie mentioned, please, please, please reach out to your local law enforcement, reach out to the Mississippi Department of Employment Security. We need to hear from you. We need to talk to you. We need to interview you. And if you're a bank or financial institution, please do the same, because what we are seeing in this fraud is the money's going to banks out of state. The monies are coming into banks in Mississippi that might be defrauding other state departments of employment security. So this has to be a team effort, and I'm proud of Jackie and I'm proud of the Secret Service led by Sean Wolf here in the state of Mississippi, proud of the Department of Labor being investigated by Chase Bozeman, and I think we've got an incredible team, as Jackie said, meeting weekly or almost daily to root out this fraud. So please contact us. If you can't get in touch with anyone else, of course, call us in the U.S. Attorney's Office. Governor, that's all I have.
Thank you. I appreciate you and your team's effort in leading the charge here, and we want to continue to work very closely, because these are significant dollars, but these are dollars who are intended for those individuals who are out of work to no fault of their own. For those of you who are committing fraud, or for those who are basically taking advantage of this situation, I have full confidence in the agencies that Mike mentioned, and that they will find you and they will prosecute you to the fullest extent available. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Dobbs, who's going to give us our daily update on COVID-19.
Thank you, Governor. So today we're reporting 283 additional cases of coronavirus, with sadly 4 additional deaths. When we look at our long-term trends, we can see that we're having steady case reports and even a slight increase over week, clocking around 300 to or high 200s every day. So we're not seeing any decline. Still very important to keep an eye on that as we go forward. If we look at our hospitalization, we continue to have significant number of folks hospitalized with coronavirus. At this present time, we have 100 individuals on ventilators, an increase to 163 in intensive care units, and then 467 in the hospital altogether. It is still really a big challenge because we do have a lot of normal utilization, and we're still stressed out. And I've been getting emails throughout the weekend about, hey, the ICU's full. What are you going to do about it? What can we do? The only way to prevent coronavirus from getting in the intensive care unit is prevent transmission. So really, we will do our part and try to make sure if you need a ventilator, there's one going to be there for you. But if we have waves and waves of transmission, there really is no amount of planning that can overcome massive numbers of coronavirus that we may well have in the fall, when we have a lot of kids going back to school and colleges getting back operating. So please take these simple steps we know that will prevent transmission of coronavirus. And it's really simple stuff. I mean, all we got to do is practice the simple things like social distancing. Stay 6 feet away from one another when you're out and about. Wear a mask when you're in public or when you're at work, and when you can't properly social distance, use normal hand hygiene. Wash your hands. Use hand sanitizer. And then avoid mass gatherings. This is actually one of the big things that is giving us trouble. Is people are so desperate to get back to normal. We're seeing all sorts of areas where people are gathering in ways that are not only normal but super normal, I think, because of their desperation in the previous months, which is understandable. But now we're chasing a lot of outbreaks. A lot of them are in churches. We have outbreaks in state offices. We did actually have a case in one of my offices, but fortunately it was one case. They all had a conference, but they were separated from 6 feet and wearing a mask. So it made a huge difference in that office because they were able to keep working to service the needs of Mississippians. And also summer sports teams. We are starting to see cases among summer sports teams, people at all levels having cases, and it's been extremely disruptive, and it's not at all surprising. If we think about how many people are out there that are potentially contagious, a back-of-the-envelope calculation will tell you that on average 1 in 100 or maybe 1 in 150 people are going to be contagious with coronavirus at any given time. And when you get a big group of people together like that, there's a real common likelihood that people are going to transmit the disease to somebody else. So please follow these simple steps. Be careful. This isn't over, and it's likely to get worse in the future. It's inevitable, but we need to be prepared. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Dobbs. At this time, I'll turn it over to Director Michelle to give us an update.
Thank you, Governor. Just a couple of things to remind everyone about. The Battelle system that we've talked about a number of times, utilization, we've got 122 facilities that are registered for that. That is the system to take the N95 mask and decon those masks for reuse. We've seen the utilization triple over the last week, so I appreciate healthcare facilities, long-term care facilities utilize that system. It's extremely important that you do utilize that system so that we can extend the PPE inventory that we have. So thank you for utilizing that, and please continue to do so. A reminder that today is the last day to register for disaster assistance for the April 12th, tornado. I know that was brief last week, but today is the last day. 11 p.m. Is the last, is basically the clock is over to receive applications there for that. Just a reminder, for individual assistance, you can go online to disasterassistance.gov, disasterassistance.gov, or call 1-800-621-3362. For small business assistance, disaster loan assistance, you can go to disasterloanassistance.sba.gov, or you can call 404-331-0333. Again, today is the last day to apply for that disaster assistance. And the last thing, just hurricane preparedness guides are out in both the English and Spanish version. We have the digital copy back on the Vietnamese translation as well as the Braille. So those are the four translations that we will have that will be out this year. And I want to thank again Ingalls Shipbuilding for assisting us with the Vietnamese translation, and also the Mississippi Department of Rehab Services on our Braille version. Governor, that completes my update today, sir.
Thank you, Director Michelle. Questions? Courtney Ann.
Can we go to the unemployment fraud and just how easy or challenging it is to track these folks down? Maybe give some background on what the most likely way is that they're getting this information from folks.
I'll start by saying, and we had a meeting about this morning, and I was trying to get my staff to break it down to me like as if I were someone asking that question. So, fraud can come in many ways. It can come from the rings that Mr. Hurst spoke of, and grand scale schemes from out of this country and those kind of things. And then you may have smaller situations where a family member, a friend, what you thought were a friend, someone may get someone else's information by some means and file unemployment, and it's fraud because it's not their information and it's with intent to falsely get things that don't belong to them. So it can come in as simple as a disgruntled family member or a friend. It could be part of the criminal ring. It could even be, I'll say, a mistake that ends up being fraudulent, and a person might not know it at the beginning, but should know it over time. But it comes to us in all those different forms and fashions. But the main thing I would say is protect your personal, private information. Social media. Mr. Hurst will agree with me, we talked about, is people reveal a lot of information even unknowingly through their social media presence. So be careful of the information that you share to the public-facing types of information, specifically social media, because if a group of people has an intent to do harm, whether it be from the unemployment insurance world or just stealing your identity for other purposes, they can get a lot of information by what you post on social media. I'll say this, that when Employment Security has some information on employers and their staff members, but we do not have most of the other information that is required when someone files for unemployment. So they have to get that from another source. And things like I just talked about may be the very source that they get it from.
Courtney, I don't want to address what we're actually seeing because we are still in an investigative stage, but what I can tell you around the country that has been reported is, as Jackie said, some of these fraudulent unemployment claims are coming from breaches of data security, personal identifying information being stolen. As Jackie said, some of it is just nefarious individuals that we always see trying to take advantage of the system with their own information and not being eligible. There's many ways it could happen, but I don't want to get into specifics just because we're not at the right time for that.
Yep.
Is it my understanding that you'll look at employers who have recalled their employees, say we're back open and we would like you to come back, and go after them and say we won't give you unemployment if you don't go back to work? Could you kind of clear that up?
Yes, please. Thank you for asking that question. When an employer reports to us that they have a job available for an employee again, on a normal, everything perfect situation, it would be, we would take them off of unemployment. We put a stop on their unemployment because they have a job to go back to. Now, a person filing unemployment has a due process that is availed to them, and one of the things, they may have good cause for not going back. So it doesn't just for non-fraud issues or just simply where we have to make this reconciliation between an employer having work for them and them coming back. There is a due process series of information that takes place to make sure that is in fact the facts surrounding the case, and if there is good cause, they may well be not taken off unemployment or restored unemployment if they were stopped along the way. So there's a process in place to make all of those things happen and determine. And if it needs to go to an appeals process because the two parties don't agree, then that is the next step along the way.
And just so everyone understands, the legalities notwithstanding, I abhor you. I encourage you that if you have been unemployed and your employer calls and offers your job back to you, that you take it. I understand that the pandemic unemployment assistance provides an additional $600. Maximum unemployment insurance in Mississippi is $230. Correct me if I'm wrong. $235 per week. The bill that passed the U.S. Congress adds an additional $600. That $600 runs out at the end of July. And so even if it were legal, which it's not, but even if it were legal, know that that $600 is going away. It's the middle of June. Take your job back while you can, unless you have some pre-existing condition that makes it unsafe for you to do so. And obviously, we'll work through that.
Dave Elliott with WLOX has a question. Dave?
Governor, you have now on 2 or 3 occasions talked about the importance of Federal CARES Act money going to shore up the state's unemployment insurance trust fund. I'm not aware of legislators appearing to make that a priority. Of course, I'm not sure of what's going on behind the scenes. Besides just talking about it at your press conferences, are you having personal conversations with legislative leadership in regard to that?
Thank you for the question, Dave. I hope you had a great weekend on the beautiful Mississippi Gulf Coast. We are definitely having those conversations. I appreciate Jackie Turner has sent a letter to legislative leadership, a letter on which I was copied. I appreciate her doing that. She has suggested that if the unemployment rate averages 12.5% for calendar year 2020, that it could take as much as $500 million to ensure that Mississippi small businesses do not get a significant tax increase in 2021. I have seen her letter. I agree with her numbers, and I have made that perfectly clear to any and everyone that will listen. Now, as to whether or not anyone's making it a priority or not, I haven't seen a bill that's passed either the House or the Senate with any dollars beyond the $300 million that was passed for the small business program. The small business program was a good piece of legislation, one that I have signed and one that we are currently implementing. It's because it was a good way in which to get small businesses back open and to get some of their expenses paid. But it doesn't make any sense for there to be a $300 million small business plan that passes the legislature for us then all to be able to pound ourselves on the chest and talk about how good we are, knowing that there's a multi-$100 million tax increase for small businesses right around the corner in 2021. So it is critically important for the people of this state, particularly for small business owners and quite frankly for consumers. Every single one of you who shop in small businesses across Mississippi will see your prices go up if tax increases occur, and that can easily be resolved simply by putting CARES Act money into, as by the way, so many other states are doing as we speak, to ensure that their trust fund is properly funded.
Business Insider has a question. Aria?
Thank you for taking my question. Yes, Governor, given the recent uptick in coronavirus cases and hospitalizations, is it possible that increased lockdown restrictions or another stay-at-home order is on the horizon?
Anything is possible. We are in 2020 and we are in coronavirus world. But I would say it is exceptionally unlikely that we would choose to significantly close down our economy going forward. We'll continue to work with and communicate with Dr. Dobbs and his team. We have worked very, very closely together throughout this process. But the reality is that that we have to ensure that every decision we make, we protect not only the lives of Mississippians, but also the livelihoods of Mississippians. We have done everything in our power to convey the risk associated with doing certain things, and we have urged the individual members of the state to, in fact, adhere to the guidelines that we have put in place. The vast majority of Mississippians are doing just that. There are some that are not, and that's unfortunate, and we want to continue to encourage 100% participation in the guidelines, but I am going to work very, very hard to ensure that we do not shut down our economy again. But we also have to understand that our number one priority and has been from the beginning, every single Mississippian that can get better with quality care should get that quality care. That's our goal. That's the reason hospital utilization is so important. That's the reason that you see us talk a lot about number of patients in the hospital, number of patients in ICU beds, and number of patients that are on ventilators. Those are the numbers that we're watching very, very closely, and we're going to continue to do so. But we have got to make sure that we do not find ourselves in a scenario in which we have 300,000 Mississippians that are out of work simply because of actions taken by their government.
Kobe Vance with MPB has a question.
Yes, for people that are concerned that their identity might be used for fraudulent purposes, how can they check to see if their identity and their information is safe?
As far as unemployment insurance goes, or for a larger picture of,
Yeah, I would just say to check the,
specifically.
Go ahead.
Unemployment insurance.
well, first of all, if Employment Security will not ever charge fees for our services. So if you get someone that is asking you to pay a fee for someone to help you file unemployment or anything, that's the first sign that there's something wrong. Secondly, employers get claim state when someone files a claim. Employers get statements that tell them that someone has filed a claim against you. So number one, that will be an indicator that something has gone wrong, is that when you never were laid off or employers have called you back and you're working, that will happen through the employer-employee relationship, and then you and the employer will let us know. Thirdly, if you get correspondence or documentation from MDS and you have not filed unemployment, first thing to do is to contact that safe at mds.ms.gov and let us know that you've received correspondence and you have not filed for unemployment. Those are the three main situations of how identification happens when someone is filed, because the information that comes to you to provide documentation or through the employer will happen. And so those are the main indicators of if someone has used your identity to file. And those are the cases that are coming to us, the majority of cases coming to us.
Renee?
Hunter Dawkins with the Gazebo Gazette has a question.
Thank you, Renee. Thank you, Governor. The question would be for Mr. Hurst, but if you want to chime in, Governor, that's a good possibility too. Now, in speaking about these fraud activities, is there has there been any word that you can let the public know, Mr. Hurst? Has there been any social media or so that are trying to reach out to to small businesses such as Facebook or Google, where you would be reluctant to, if you were a small business owner, to give them any information as such?
No, I don't think I'd be reluctant to do that at all. I know a number of U.S. attorneys around the country have recently issued press releases notifying the public, notifying small businesses, notifying individual citizens about all the fraudulent activity that Jackie has mentioned. In fact, I know a small business owner himself who received one of these notices from MDES telling him that he had been laid off from his own business. So that's one example of where you just reach out to MDES, you email that email that Jackie has given us. But you're right, we need to get the word out there, and that's why we are here today, to let everyone be on alert, to be ready, and to respond when they think they have become a victim, because no one should be a victim in this state. And if we find evidence beyond a reasonable doubt, we're going to prosecute it to the fullest extent of the law.
Leah Willingham with AP has a question.
Thank you, Renee. This is a question for Jackie Turner. You said this unemployment fraud is an emerging issue that you've seen during the last few weeks. Can you give us an idea of how prevalent this issue is and how many cases of unemployment fraud you're seeing?
I actually cannot give you that information today. It's ongoing investigations, but we know that in the last couple of weeks, I'll say 3 weeks, that we have had numerous situations where we, just like Mr. Hurst just described, where we have been told, hey, I got this information in the mail and I never filed unemployment insurance. So we are gathering that information. We are working on it. We did a few thousands of stops over the weekend to stop the fraudulent claims from going forward. So we do not know the entire extent of the fraudulent claims in Mississippi, but as Mr. Hurst said, as an ongoing basis, we'll be working. Our job is to stop it completely, get you the information that you need to file it. But even before that, we have necessary precautions in place in our system to stop as much as we can, and then our own internal processes, and get the information over to the enforcement agencies such as Mr. Hurst, and let them prosecute those that can be held accountable.
Governor, Dr. Dobbs addressed this last time, and I think it's important. Do you believe there's systemic racism in Mississippi's public health arena, and is it time to declare a public health emergency for those Native Americans living here that are seeing an extremely high amount of death rates and things of that nature, and for those African Americans communities that are seeing less but similar amounts?
Well, thank you, Gerald. I appreciate that. That question was presented to Dr. Dobbs on Friday afternoon, and it was, I think, presented at least initially due to the fact that Dr. Dobbs had given a talk some year or 2 years prior with respect to that topic. I thought he did a good job answering the question on Friday afternoon. What I would tell you is, as you look at the coronavirus cases in our state, and as well as the deaths, there is no doubt that this particular virus disproportionately affects African Americans. It disproportionately affects Native Americans, at least so far, with the data that we have, even more so than African Americans. But both of those are far greater than that of Caucasian Mississippians, and I think there's a lot of different reasons for that. But certainly, poor health outcomes long term are an issue that our State Department of Health and others, poor health outcomes for African Americans in our state is something that we've got to continue to get better at and improve upon, and it's certainly something I'm committed to work with them to make that happen.
Dr. Dobbs, we've heard that there's a case or a staff member at the Capitol who's tested positive. I know early on when they were talking about how to come back and what that would look like, what does the risk level look like for that many people being in a building when you have had someone who's worked in there? Do they need to reevaluate protocols?
We've had several agencies in several locations, businesses and state government, because no one's immune, have identified cases. And that's just going to happen. And as I mentioned previously, if you have a certain proportion of people who are going to be infectious at any time, and if it's 1 in 100 or so, it is just going to happen. And that's why it's really important to have this sort of mindset of anyone could have it at any given time. My son's in medical school, and he sent me some articles to review. 44% of cases probably come from asymptomatic people, or thereabouts. So a lot of people you can get it from asymptomatic people, and we have a lot of people whose symptoms are very mild. And that's the real challenge because, in a place like Mississippi, you have sinuses and stuff like sinus issues and things like that. But it's those simple things. It's that social distancing. It's the mask. To be considered a contact, you need to be within 6 feet of somebody without a mask for 15 minutes. And so if we cannot do that, then your level of risk is very low. If we also consider, good ventilation, maximizing Zoom and conference calls and those sorts of things, we can be very efficient and very productive in our work environments, whether it's government or private business. If we follow these simple things, then it'll keep us going a lot stronger if we can just do those.
Renee?
Has a question.
Yeah, Governor, your executive orders in terms of the reopening have required businesses to provide PPE, face masks to be worn by employees. I keep hearing from a lot of people, we keep hearing from a lot of people who think you should extend that to require customers to wear face masks, and that's a tough one here in Mississippi. You've been relying on people's common sense instead. Is there any scenario where you could see mandating people to wear face masks?
Thank you for the question, Dave. And the answer is yes. There is a scenario in which we could see mandates for individuals and in the case that you mentioned, customers to wear masks. In fact, we've done that. We've done it in 7 or 8, I think 8 now, different counties when the numbers justified it. We did it in Attala County. We did it in Leake County, we did it in Scott County, we did it in Neshoba County, we did it in Newton County, we did it in Lauderdale County, we did it in Jasper County, we did it in Wayne County. We did it when the numbers in the data suggested that was necessary. And so I would absolutely tell you that as we go forward, as we monitor the data that comes in, it's less likely that we would see a statewide mandate, but it is very possible that we could see a spike in any one county that would lead Dr. Dobbs and I to sit down, have a conversation, and say, "Hey, we need to enforce more measures in certain areas of the state based upon a specific spike that has occurred in a specific county." So it's unlikely that it would happen statewide. It could if the numbers really got out of whack and spiked significantly. What I would say, if you look at our numbers in Mississippi over the last 4 weeks, some would like to say it's a spike. It's not. It is a slight uptick. It's certainly not declining, but it's not a spike that puts significant pressure on the underlying healthcare system. But we are not seeing significant declines either. We are seeing upticks, not downticks. And so we're monitoring that, and so I think it's more likely to see individual counties or individual communities where we put additional guidelines like mandating masks. But again, I can't reiterate enough, it is important that if you go out in public that you wear a mask. Please do it. It protects not only yourself, but it also shows that you care enough to protect your fellow Mississippians. Dr. Dobbs, you want to, you agree with that?
Absolutely, yes, sir, thank you.
Good.
On the unemployment fraud, could you tell us the penalties if you are convicted of unemployment fraud?
Well, Gerald, it really depends on the crime. In this scenario, we have potential for identity theft, potential for money laundering, wire fraud, and those can be anywhere. If it's aggravated identity theft, it's a minimum of 2 years on top of whatever else we convict you on. Wire fraud, we're looking at 20 years. So it's all over the board, and it really depends upon the facts of each individual case.
Well, again, I do have a call I need to get on. I see no further questions at this time. We will be back in the days ahead. I want to thank everyone that's here today, particularly Mike and Jackie. Obviously, unemployment insurance is an area that the Congress saw fit to significantly increase and enhance in this terrible, tragic times, but it's also incumbent upon all of us as good public servants to make sure that we minimize and mitigate any fraud that may exist. And I appreciate both of these individuals and the teams throughout state and federal government that are working together to make sure that we do just that. So again, thank you all for being here, and God bless.